One was a relentless republic forged in discipline, duty, and the sword. A machine of war, conquest, and unbreakable law. The other was an empire of the sea, rich, vast, and ancient. Its ships ruled the Mediterranean. Its merchants touched every shore. Its walls had never been breached. Rome and Carthage, two civilizations, two destinies, one inevitable collision. For over a century, they fought in a struggle that spanned continents, by land, by sea, through fire, betrayal, and blood. It was a clash not just of armies, but of worldviews, of empire versus empire, iron versus gold, wolf versus phoenix. And when it was over, only one stood. This is the story of the Punic Wars, the conflict that would shape the Western world, define military strategy for generations, and erase one of the greatest cities in human history. Carthage versus Rome, the battle that changed everything. Who were they? To understand how this war shook the ancient world, we have to understand the two giants before they clashed. Rome began humbly, just a cluster of villages on the banks of the Tiber River. It wasn't born into greatness, it earned it. Founded, as legend goes, by twin brothers raised by a wolf, Rome was forged through centuries of struggle, fending off invasions, absorbing neighbors, and slowly transforming from a kingdom to a republic. What Rome lacked in wealth, it made up for in discipline and ambition. It built an army of citizen soldiers, hardened, drilled, loyal to the state. Every battle was a lesson, every setback a stepping stone. And by the 3rd century BCE, Rome had become a serious force in central Italy, bound together by law, roads, and an unshakable belief in Roman destiny. Carthage, on the other hand, had taken a different path. Founded centuries earlier by Phoenician traders from Tyre, Carthage was a marvel of commerce. Its harbors were engineering masterpieces. Its navy ruled the waves. Its influence stretched across North Africa, Spain, Sicily, and the islands of the Mediterranean. Where Rome built its power on land through conquest, Carthage mastered the sea through trade. Gold, silver, dyes, grain, glass, everything flowed through Carthaginian markets. It was a merchant empire, not a military one. But don't mistake wealth for weakness. Carthage could hire massive mercenary armies. It had fortresses, warships, and spies, and it wasn't afraid to protect its interests. Culturally, they couldn't have been more different. Rome valued austerity, honor, and sacrifice for the Republic. Carthage prized wealth, strategy, and the influence that came with controlling trade. One sought glory and conquest. The other sought power through commerce. And yet, the Mediterranean wasn't big enough for both. Rome looked south across the water and saw a rival that blocked its expansion. Carthage looked north and saw a hungry, rising republic that threatened its control of Sicily and beyond. Two ideologies, two economies, one sea. It was only a matter of time before swords were drawn, and the ancient world would tremble. The Punic Wars begin. The first blow came in 264 BCE, over the island of Sicily, a fertile, strategically vital prize that lay right between Rome and Carthage. What began as a local dispute soon escalated into a continent-spanning conflict that would become known as the First Punic War. Until then, Rome had never fought a major naval battle. They were a land power. Their legions had conquered Italy, but the sea? That was Carthaginian territory. Carthage ruled the waves. Their ships were faster, their sailors more experienced, their naval tactics unmatched. When the war began, most expected Rome to be swept aside like driftwood. But Rome didn't back down. Instead, they did what they always did. They adapted. After capturing a Carthaginian ship, Roman engineers studied it, measured it, reverse-engineered it, and mass-produced hundreds of copies. But even with ships, the Romans knew they couldn't outmaneuver Carthaginian sailors. So they changed the rules. Rome invented the corvus, a massive wooden boarding bridge mounted on the front of their ships. When lowered onto an enemy deck, it latched with an iron spike, turning a naval battle into a land battle, Rome's speciality. Suddenly, the sea wasn't just about sailing anymore. It was about hand-to-hand combat, and the Roman legions, trained, ruthless, and armored, excelled at that. The First Punic War raged for 23 brutal years. Tens of thousands died, fleets were sunk, fortresses besieged. Victories flipped back and forth. Carthage struck hard, especially in the early years. Their generals were cunning. Their ships controlled the coasts. But Rome refused to break. Even after catastrophic naval losses, even after entire fleets were destroyed in storms, Rome rebuilt. Again, and again, and again. In 241 BCE, it all came to a head at the Battle of the Aegates Islands. The Romans, tactically reformed and fueled by desperation, crushed the Carthaginian fleet, cutting off supply lines and forcing Carthage to sue for peace. The result? Carthage surrendered Sicily, paid a crushing indemnity, and lost its dominance at sea. But here's the thing, the peace didn't feel like peace. Carthage felt humiliated, stripped of its prize, dismantled not just in strength but in pride. Rome, on the other hand, had tasted power beyond the Italian mainland. It had built a navy from nothing, defeated a maritime superpower, and gained a foothold across the sea. Neither side had forgotten the cost, and neither side had any intention of letting the other rise again. The First Punic War was over, but everyone knew the real war hadn't even started yet. Hannibal strikes back, Second Punic War. Carthage may have lost the First Punic War, but it had not lost its fire. That fire was passed to a man whose name would haunt Rome for generations, Hannibal Barca. He wasn't just a general, he was a prodigy, a strategist, a storm in human form. As a boy, Hannibal swore a blood oath to his father, Hamilcar Barca, that he would never rest until Rome was destroyed. And unlike many warriors driven by hatred, Hannibal possessed something far more dangerous: brilliance. When Carthage began expanding into Iberia, modern Spain, Rome grew uneasy. Tensions ignited when a Roman allied town was attacked. Rome demanded Hannibal back down. He didn't. Instead, he launched one of the boldest invasions in military history. He didn't sail across the sea. He crossed the Alps, with tens of thousands of men, with war elephants, in the dead of winter. It was madness, and it worked. The journey was brutal. Ice, blizzards, treacherous mountain passes, and ambushes by native tribes took a heavy toll. Nearly half his army perished. But what emerged on the other side was a hardened, vengeful force. And Rome wasn't ready. Hannibal cut through northern Italy like a scythe. He won battle after battle, each more devastating than the last. But nothing compared to Cannae. It was 216 BCE. Rome sent nearly 80,000 troops, one of the largest armies it had ever assembled, to crush Hannibal once and for all. What followed was not just a defeat, it was a massacre. Hannibal executed a double envelopment, a tactic so rare, it's still studied in military academies today. He lured the Roman legions in, then collapsed his cavalry around them, encircling the entire force. In one day, over 50,000 Romans were killed. It remains one of the bloodiest battles in ancient history. Rome was broken, morally, politically, spiritually. Allies defected. Cities opened their gates to Hannibal. Panic gripped the Senate. The city of Rome prepared for siege. And yet, Hannibal never marched on Rome itself. He waited. He hoped Carthage would send reinforcements to finish the job. They didn't. Carthage, cautious and fractured by internal politics, failed to capitalize on Hannibal's greatest victories. It's one of the great what-ifs of history. What if Carthage had supported him fully? What if he had burned Rome to the ground? But it never happened. Instead, Rome regrouped. It reformed its legions, it rebuilt its alliances. It turned the tide of war, slowly, strategically, and with deadly resolve. And Hannibal, the man who had brought Rome to the brink of destruction, would soon find the tables turned. If you're loving this cinematic dive into history, hit that like button and subscribe for more epic ancient battles, lost empires, and forgotten technologies. Because coming up next, the turning point, the battle that brought Carthage to its knees, forever. Scipio's revenge, the fall of Carthage. Rome had been shaken, but not broken. And from its wounded pride rose a man who would become the embodiment of vengeance, Scipio Africanus. He had studied Hannibal, watched his tactics, learned from his victories. But Scipio didn't just want to match Hannibal, he wanted to beat him at his own game. While Hannibal roamed Italy, Scipio took the fight to Carthage's stronghold in Iberia. modern-day Spain. City by city, he dismantled Carthage's Western Empire, severing its lifelines and demoralizing its allies. Then, in a bold move, Scipio did what Hannibal never dared. He brought the war to Carthage itself. Faced with invasion, Carthage had no choice but to recall its greatest general from Italy. After 16 years on foreign soil, Hannibal returned home to defend it from the very tactics he had once unleashed. In 202 BCE, on the plains of Zama, the two titans finally met. It was the clash the world had waited for. Hannibal, older now, but still brilliant, commanded war elephants and veteran troops. Scipio, young, daring, and unshakably Roman, had adapted Hannibal's methods and turned Carthage's own mercenary strategy against them. When the dust settled, Rome had won. The Battle of Zama was the final blow. Hannibal was defeated. Carthage was forced into humiliating peace terms, massive war indemnities, destruction of most of its navy, and a promise never to go to war without Rome's permission. Carthage had become a vassal state. But Rome wasn't finished. Decades passed. Carthage rebuilt, economically, not militarily. It followed the rules, paid its debts, and rose once again as a wealthy trade hub. That success ironically became a threat. Roman politicians, especially Cato the Elder, fueled paranoia. He ended every speech with the same chilling phrase, "Carthago delenda est." Carthage must be destroyed. And so, in 149 BCE, under the flimsiest of provocations, Rome returned. This time, they came to erase, not conquer. The Third Punic War was a siege. For 3 years, Rome encircled Carthage. Its people starved. The city, blockaded by land and sea, resisted to the bitter end. In 146 BCE, Roman legions stormed the city. The fighting turned to fire. Buildings collapsed. Streets ran red. Libraries burned. And then came the salt. According to legend, after Carthage was reduced to ash, the Romans sowed salt into its soil so that nothing could ever grow there again. Whether myth or truth, the symbolism is clear. Carthage was not just defeated, it was erased. A civilization that had once ruled the seas, rivaled Rome, and shaped trade across continents, wiped from the map. Its people enslaved, its knowledge lost, its memory buried beneath Roman triumph. And from the ashes of Carthage and the Roman Empire would rise unchecked. Aftermath. Why this battle mattered. When Carthage fell, it wasn't just the end of a city, it was the end of an era. With its greatest rival destroyed, Rome stood unchallenged in the Western world. The Mediterranean, once a shared sea of traders, explorers, and empires, was now Mare Nostrum, Rome's personal lake. For the next 5 centuries, no power would rival Roman dominance in the region. But something else happened, something quieter. With Carthage's destruction, a culture vanished. Carthaginian engineering, shipbuilding, economic systems, religious practices, lost. Its libraries burned, its language faded, its temples were flattened. We know fragments, through Roman lenses, filtered by hatred and propaganda. But the Carthaginian perspective? Silenced forever. We'll never know what knowledge was erased, what ideas never got passed on, what history never got written. And in Carthage's silence, Rome's story grew louder. This war didn't just shape territory, it shaped legacy. Rome's strategy, adapt, endure, overwhelm, became the foundation of Western military doctrine. Its brutality was precise, calculated, systematic. It didn't just win battles, it ended civilizations. The Punic Wars were a crucible. They forged Rome into the empire it would become. An empire built not just on roads and laws, but on ash. If this story fascinated you, don't stop here. Watch our next video, The Sea People, the mysterious invaders who destroyed ancient civilizations. And let us know in the comments, who do you think should have won, Carthage or Rome? Subscribe to explore the forgotten battles that built our world.